joining me to talk about Islamic finance is Jude Chiemeka, the Executive Director of Capital Markets at the NGX Exchange. Hello, Jude, and welcome to the program. Good morning.
Good morning, Nancy. Thank you for having us.
Good morning. I can see Jude. Director, please, can you punch Jude? Okay, fine. I can see you now. Jude, long time no
Yeah, thank
see.
you so much for having us.
Long time no see. Now
Yeah.
let's get started, Jude. Can you speak to my viewers about what Islamic finance is really? Beyond, of course, it's because let me just say this, because when someone hears Islamic finance, they think it's all about provision of financial products to Muslims. Of course, that's it also, according to Sharia law principles and regulations. Can you just speak to my guests about, to my audience, about what Islamic finance is all about? And I also know there are different sectors in Islamic finance, so if you can speak more about that.
All right. Thank you so much, Nancy. And once again, thank you so much for having us from the NGX. We're always delighted to have an opportunity to talk about what we do at the NGX. So if you think about Islamic finance, I think it's always better to remove the lens of religion from it and just look at it as a financing tool for capital raise as well as for corporates to be able to raise capital, government to be able to raise capital, and also to bridge financial literacy or improve financial inclusion. It's largely a method of financing that takes away interest-bearing instruments, removes gambling, removes uncertain volatility in the instrument that is being held, and takes away unethical practices. So it's more in line with ethical best practices to ensure that the instrument itself is compliant with the Sharia principles, which obviously are in line with the IOS school standards in terms of the administration. So from a simple perspective, Islamic finance is just another alternative financing avenue for corporates, governments to be able to raise capital from the larger pool of capital within the domestic economy.
If we take a look at Islamic finance, okay, Jude, I would like you to answer the other part of the question, because when we talk about Islamic finance, or as we're talking about it today, some people will be able to connect the dots and just think it's about Islamic banking. But like I mentioned earlier, are there other sectors that Islamic finance cover apart from banking?
Yes, I mean, largely the financial capital markets, in this case, it is the focus. But Islamic finance can also apply across different sectors. I mean, yesterday, we had an event with Islamic Development Bank Institute, and they were talking about corporates. Corporates that hitherto one would have thought were not Islamic institutions would actually qualify on the equity side as much as the interest bearing activity of those corporates are not exceeding the threshold as defined by the Sharia principle. So that could also apply. And we've seen Islamic finance being utilized by predominantly Muslim countries. But at the same time, it's also important to point out that it facilitates capital flow, because you see a lot of Islamic finance activities going on in the US, and the US is not essentially an Islamic country.
Yeah.
So it goes across different avenues for capital mobilization, deployment. It just has to agree with the Sharia component, which is the Sharia principles in line with ISO defined standards.
Mm. Since the introduction of, perhaps I would say that uh, the introduction of Islamic banking to Nigeria further, expanded the conversation around Islamic finance. I don't know, I could be wrong, but I remember vividly under Emir Sanusi's leadership at the CBN, when the Central Bank of Nigeria at that time gave license to Jais Bank. That was, I think, 2011, 2012. It further expanded conversations around Islamic finance. So if you take a look at that time, from that time till now, how far have we done in terms of Islamic financial products? I know that Jais Bank is listed on the NGX. I think Lotus too, and perhaps one other, but those are the two coming to my mind now, you know. And we've also seen the federal government taking advantage of Islamic finance, Islamic funding. The sukuk, you go around the country, you see some roads are being built or rehabilitated as a result of sukuk, which of course it's Islamic product. So how far have we gone from about 2011, 2012 to where we are right now? And what has also been the contribution of NGX, former Nigerian exchange, Nigerian Stock Exchange? Now you guys are NGX. What has been the contribution of your organization to the growth of Islamic finance in Nigeria?
Thank you. So Islamic finance has grown significantly. I mean, globally, it's a double-digit growth that we have seen. And like you mentioned earlier, depending on the agency, we do know that Fitch states that global industry size to be somewhere around 800 billion US. And so in Nigeria, the whole journey started in 2012, but in 2013, Osun State issued the first sukuk ijara that was used for schools reconstruction. That was about 10 plus billion that was raised from that activity. And like you pointed out, we just had one or two listed corporates, but now that has grown. We have about 9 sukuk entities that are listed on the NGX, and the market cap is well over 849 billion. If you look at what the SEC is targeting, it's targeting about 25% of all listed instruments to be Sharia compliant. They have a target of 50 listings with a market cap of 5 trillion by 2025. And we're really well on course. Obviously, there are challenges, and we do recognize the challenges, which is really around capacity, awareness within the domestic market. And so the event we had yesterday with the Islamic Development Institute is really part of the contribution of the NGX in helping corporates to understand all the various elements. It's not just sukuk, there are other areas of Islamic financial products that can be created to allow improved participation and capital raise from the market. So from the NGX perspective, we're really more or less in tune with the capital market plan, master plan that the SEC is driving, and sukuk is, and Islamic finance is a critical component of that. And that is why we're partnering with international organizations to just try and deepen the local knowledge, which we believe will help corporates and government. From the government side, we've really seen the government raise well over $1 trillion utilizing this product. And you talk about the roads that are being done by the use of the proceeds, and that is a good thing. The infrastructural gap within the domestic market is still largely financed from plain vanilla bonds, but we could do a lot more in that regard to be able to raise the capital required to bridge those financial gaps. So we'll continue along product development, creating more products, creating more avenues, and also trying to get more inclusion. As you're aware, we just recently launched in partnership with MTN, the USSD code, *5474# that really brings the retail clients more involved in the market. With that, they can get pricing, market information, and they'll be able to really utilize that to be able to participate in offerings. And so we believe that in the long run, the retail investor participation in our market will also deepen, and that will also help drive financial inclusion, financial literacy, and all of these components. We believe technology will play a critical role, and the NGS will continue to use technology to drive our operations, drive market efficiency, market inclusiveness, and that's really what we're about.
So what was the partnership about with Islamic Development Bank Institute? Really, I would really like to know where the partnership will be.
It's really more around capacity building. So the theme of the workshop is really around economic growth and also product development utilizing Islamic capital markets. So today, we believe that in partnering with Islamic Development Bank Institute, we'll be able to deepen knowledge of Islamic products, and so that corporates can become aware of the various areas that they can actually utilize. Some of the projects that they are doing today, utilizing plain vanilla bonds, can actually be done in a lot more efficient manner, utilizing Islamic finance. So that partnership will help deepen that local knowledge. And we had well over 100 corporates that were in attendance, just looking at the various financing options, various instruments that they can utilize to create and deepen their capital requirement for all the things that they are doing. The interesting thing that if you think about what is going on in the world globally, the key countries that are really leading in this area will be Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Malaysia, and they are doing quite a lot in raising capital for infrastructural development within those areas. Saudi Arabia, for instance, Aramco was able to raise 2.6 billion US dollars that they use in financing their refineries. And today in Nigeria, we're talking about raising capital for our refineries and all of that. We can actually use Islamic finance to do a whole lot more in that regard. The other area is really around financial inclusion. If you think about all the many people that are excluded from the financial markets, some because of ethical reasons, now with Islamic finance knowledge, they will see instruments that they can invest in that they agree with. And so that will also drive financial inclusion in the domestic economy. Also, SMEs that are away because of the principle of Sharia, they should be able to participate in risk taking and they'll be able to get funding. The government is really committed to the growth of the SMEs, and we think that they can actually leverage Islamic finance capital market to be able to raise the required capital to drive these SMEs and medium-scale enterprises, which we believe will help create more jobs, lead to more economic prosperity for the major youths that we have in Nigeria that are financially excluded at the moment.
I like that you talked about, Islamic finance hubs, and I'm wondering if Nigeria can be one of those hubs in Africa. Of course, we know places like Dubai. You just mentioned Saudi Arabia. In fact, Saudi Arabia houses the largest Islamic bank in the world. If I can remember the name, Al-Rajhi, if I'm not mistaken, the largest Islamic finance the largest Islamic bank in the world. So you see, country is like, of course, Saudi Arabia, you have Dubai, you mentioned Malaysia earlier on. UK too is not doing badly. London is not doing badly in terms of Islamic finance. What will really make us a hub for Islamic finance perhaps in Africa? Do you think we could be on our way there? Or if we do not take time, another country might just take over from us, even though we are the biggest economy and perhaps, as they always say, the biggest market. But now, AFTA is the biggest market.
Well, to be honest, in terms of Islamic finance, as far as we can see from the data, Nigeria remains the hub. It's more or less the leading country from the issuance. If you think about the 800 billion sukuk market globally, and Nigeria is around 2.6 billion. So that makes us really the hub for Africa at the moment. And with all the various commitments of the capital market policies, even from the center, the federal government, and all the work that SEC is doing to drive Islamic finance in Nigeria, also partnering with international partners to ensure that the rules are well curated to encourage greater participation. And if you think about the domestic PFAs, pension fund managers that we have, the asset allocation really allows a portion of those assets to be invested in Islamic products, which is really one of the sweet spots that Africa has, that Nigeria has in terms of its participation. And so there's a huge demand for Islamic products in Nigeria, which is why we're having all these partnerships to help encourage corporates to take advantage of the demand pool to create products that will allow investors to invest in these instruments. So Nigeria will continue to play a leading role on account of policy, on account of issuance. The DMO has raised well over ₦1 trillion just financing road projects in Nigeria. And I think they will continue to also leverage that market. When it started sometime in 2017, I think the issuance was somewhere around 100
Yeah,
billion.
100 billion.
But today, that has gone up because each time they issue is always oversubscribed, and that just shows you the healthy appetite that Nigeria has. So the collective investment scheme is also another window. So we do have products that have been created, like ETFs, the Lotus Halal ETFs that have been created, and we'll continue to create more products to allow greater participation, not just from the institutional investors, but also from the retail investors. I keep talking about retail investors because we think that the work we do on the technological side will make more meaning when those technology can then be used to drive financial inclusion. So Islamic uh, finance is a welcome development in the country, and there's a renewed interest to ensure that products are being created to drive greater participation within this financing space.
Mm. Are there different rules and regulations for Islamic financial products to be listed on the exchange from what we see for conventional companies? Since, of course, Islamic finance is about partnership style, kind of, partnership style, as well as also discourages uncertainty, some other issues around gambling, non-interest, and all of that. So I don't know if the NGX has specific requirements for listing for Islamic products.
Yes, we do have, but it's important to also point out that the capital markets regulation around this is really by the SEC. And so the SEC has a very robust framework and rules around the issuance of these instruments. And on the back of that, the NGX, we do have our rules as well, the listing and post-listing requirements that will encourage corporates to list, which is why we're doing all this capacity building to further just showcase and allow the corporates to understand how this works. I mean, from the broad sense, it's typically, apart from what I had said initially about what Islamic finance is really about, non-interest bearing, not gambling, um, removal of uncertainties like derivatives and the rest, and just ensuring ethical practices. There's also the rules around the core Islamic principles itself that those companies have to abide by. And also, there's also the advisor that SEC have also included, where there's an Islamic Sharia advisor to the issuer to ensure that the products that are being issued are really in line with the principles of Sharia, so that the investors are protected as well. And because investor protection is really key. And like I said, Nigeria has a significant Muslim population. Some of these people ordinarily will not invest in other type of instrument. And so these instruments, when they are created, they have to be created correctly and appropriately, transparently to ensure that participation of these investors are not misled in any way, shape, or form. So yes, there are rules from the SEC and from the NGX to ensure that investors are investing in these instruments that are well curated along the Sharia established principles.
Do you think that we've seen significant growth from perhaps that 2011, which I spoke about, the way we should expect, because you see that conventional finance has grown very rapidly. But do you think that we've seen significant growth vis-a-vis the prospects of what Islamic finance can do, not just even about financial inclusion, infrastructure funding, and all of that? If you really, want to chart a graph of that, do you think that we are growing exponentially as vis-a-vis our potential? Because for Nigeria, for example, we have a significant Muslim population. So even the penetration of Islamic finance to our Muslim population, not everyone even knows. Then those that are non-Muslims too do think that, oh, Islamic finance is only Muslims too. So so if you want to analyze that, how would you do that for me this morning?
Well, if we think about what it was in 2012 when this instrument started becoming mainstream for the Nigerian investors, I would say we have grown significantly. given all the challenges that are available, not just for this instrument, but also for other thematic instruments like the green bonds as well. The Islamic finance has grown faster in adoption, also in size, far more than the green bonds or sustainability related bonds in our market. Um, there are challenges, but I think these challenges really border largely around investor education, around issuers themselves, understanding this uh, instrument outlay, and also the willingness. I think that's really the critical component, the willingness to conform with those established Sharia principles that are more or less the guiding principle for the issuance of this instrument. And so there's a lot of investor education that is required both ways for the investors themselves to understand the dynamics of this instrument. But the beauty of it, like I said, is that there's a huge supply, there's a huge demand pool for this product. So what remains now is for us and the NGO as well, and we're committed to doing this, to create more avenues for a lot more corporates, a lot more states to be able to issue. I mean, Osun State issued the first, and they utilized it efficiently in building schools across the state. Now, Lagos State also has issued 19 billion plus of this sukuk, and which they are utilizing efficiently. And we think that more states can also participate. But you do know that from an institutional perspective of subscription, a lot of the PFAs will not invest in states that are not funding the pension of workers within their states. And this has continued to be a problem, apart from internally generated revenues, the private states from accessing the capital market. And so there's need to look into all of that to ensure that states issue more. You're quite right. Islamic finance is beyond financial inclusion, is way beyond trying to meet the demand for SMEs and grow jobs. There's an infrastructural gap in Nigeria and across Africa, and this can play a critical role in how capital can be mobilized, not just within the domestic market, but across borders as well. We have an MOU with the Luxembourg Stock Exchange, which is the biggest green finance exchange in the world. And what that has done is to allow corporates to list across borders. Islamic finance is also one of those instruments that can drive cross-border listings, cross-border flows. We have partnership with Dubai, NASDAQ Dubai, and we were talking around capacity building for Islamic finance development. So we can see capital flow across those nations to drive the infrastructural gap. So the bottom line is that governments should look to issue more instruments. They should look to increase capacity because there's a lot of international flow apart from domestic flow for this very instrument, which is why we're having these engagements, and we'll continue to have such engagements across different geographies, just ensuring that the Nigerian entity for issuers as well as investors maximize the use of these financial capital market instruments.
Okay. SEC is targeting about 50 listings of Islamic compliant products by 2025. Do you think that target is feasible?
Well, when that master plan was drawn up, obviously there were certain assumptions that were made, given the level of issuance, given the level of policy. From where we are now at exchange, I mean, we are at 9 out of the 50, and we are at 849 billion away from the 5 trillion, and this is 2023. 2025 is not that far off. But we think that just based on what is going on now with the current government, I think they will have certainly need for the capital market more, and Islamic finance is one of the ways that they can actually utilize to increase the capital that they so desperately need to augment the budget deficit. And so let's see how it goes. I think there's hope that we'll be able to achieve a reasonable score within this instrument.
Mm. So that's already okay. I can see Tajuddin Ibrahim there. Tajuddin Ibrahim, I'll be talking to you after. But one final question for Jude. Uh, of course, you've said it's still a far cry. 50 minus 9, 41. And 41 will be a lot by 2025, which is just about 2 years away or so. But just before you go, Jude, is there any other thing you want to leave behind for me and my viewers in case I haven't asked you that question? Is there any other thing you want to drop?
Thank you very much. I mean, the conversation around Islamic finance, truly speaking, should be removed. Religion should be removed from it and be looked at really from what it is, which is really a form of investing that takes away interest bearing, takes away gambling, excessive risk taking, takes away uncertainty. And if you think about all that happened with the financial crisis, most of Islamic banks were insulated from it because they were not participating in all those aggressive CODs that led to the financial crisis. So there's a lot of benefits that this instrument offers for investors, and also a lot of benefits it offers to the state, the government, to be able to raise capital, and also it will help drive financial inclusion, and it will also help drive job creation by funding SMEs as well as medium to large scale companies. So it's important for investors to look at this product and see it for what it is. It's ethical, it's safe, and it offers reasonable return within the confine of a transparent issuance program.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jude, for coming on the program today and shedding light on Islamic finance. Let's talk again soon. Good to see you again.
Thank you very